A customer asked if the aisle that loops had started over again. He said it like he was asking about a sale. I remember the way the fluorescent lights flattened his face, bleaching the color out of him so that his eyes looked darker than they should have been. He stood at the end of aisle 6, one hand on the basket rack, the other gripping a carton of milk hard enough to dent it. I didn't answer right away. The store hummed around us. It always did at night. An electric, steady vibration from the ceiling fixtures and refrigerators, like something breathing very slowly through metal lungs. The air smelled faintly of plastic and floor cleaner, layered over something older, like cardboard that had soaked up too many seasons. Aisle 6 is just canned goods, I said finally. He didn't move. That's not what I meant, he said. I looked past him. Aisle 6 stretched out in its usual way. Narrow, too bright, shelves stacked with soups and vegetables and beans. The labels made a mosaic of dull colors. Nothing moved. Nothing was out of place. Except there was a cart halfway down the aisle. We didn't have any other customers. I felt the back of my neck tighten. Has it started over? He asked again, softer this time. The words sat in the air longer than they should have. I stepped out from behind the register. The floor tiles clicked under my shoes in a pattern I knew by heart. 2 hollow, 1 solid, repeating toward the aisles. I'd worked enough nights to map the store without looking. I could walk it in the dark if I had to. I didn't like that I was counting the steps. Did you leave a cart in there? I asked. He shook his head. The hum overhead dipped for a second, then steadied. I took another step. The aisle didn't change. It never did at first. Stay there, I told him. He didn't argue. He just stood, holding the milk, watching. I crossed into aisle 6. The temperature dropped immediately, not cold, just thinner, like the air had been used too many times and was starting to lose weight. The cart was empty. It faced me, angled slightly to the left. One wheel turned inward as if it had tried to pivot and failed. I glanced back. The customer was still at the end of the aisle. He hadn't moved. The lights above him flickered once, a quick stutter, then held. I took 3 steps forward. The sound of my shoes changed. The tile pattern was wrong. I looked down. Still white squares. Still the same faint scuffs. But the hollow solid rhythm had slipped. I tapped my foot twice, listening. Hollow. Hollow. That wasn't right. I took another step. Behind me something clicked. I turned. The end of the aisle looked farther away. Not by much. Just enough that it didn't line up with the ceiling panel I remembered. The customer raised his hand slightly, like he was about to wave, then let it fall. Did it? He started. The lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times, evenly spaced like a signal. When they steadied again, the cart was gone. I hadn't heard it move. I swallowed. Okay, I said, mostly to myself. Okay. I turned back toward the shelves. The cans were wrong. Not obviously. The labels were still there. Same brands, same colors, but they weren't in the order I'd stocked them. Tomato soup had slid between corn and beans. A row of identical labels repeated too perfectly, like a copied image. I reached out and touched one. Cold. Colder than it should have been. From somewhere deeper in the aisle, I heard a sound. A wheel turning. Slow. Rhythmic. Approaching. I stepped back. The floor clicked again, hollow, hollow, hollow. No solid. The sound of the wheel stopped. Silence rushed in behind it, thick and immediate, swallowing the hum for half a second before the store's breathing returned. I turned again. The end of the aisle had moved. Not farther this time. Closer. The customer stood almost within arm's reach now, though I hadn't walked back toward him. His expression hadn't changed. Has it started over? He asked for the 3rd time. I realized then that his voice hadn't echoed. Everything else in the store carried footsteps, the hum, even the soft shift of packaging. But his voice just landed. Flat. It doesn't. I began, then stopped. Because I knew better. It did start over. That was the problem. Go to the register, I said. Wait there. He hesitated. Then he nodded once and stepped back. I watched him leave. watched the distance behave correctly for him, each step taking him farther away in a way that made sense. The lights didn't flicker above him. The floor didn't shift. The loop didn't care about him. Not yet. When he disappeared around the end cap, the aisle changed. It wasn't a visual thing. It was a feeling, like a held breath finally released. The lights flickered again. Faster this time. For times 5. The hum stuttered in sync. I felt it in my chest, a pulse that didn't match my heartbeat. "It's starting," I whispered. The words tasted wrong. I turned and walked deeper into the aisle. The shelves stretched. Not visibly. If I focused on any single section, it looked normal, but the space between them expanded as I moved, like the distance was being quietly edited. I walked faster. The floor pattern skipped entirely. No hollow, no solid, just silence under my feet. Behind me, something repeated. A footstep. Mine. But delayed. I stopped. The echo took one more step. Then another. I didn't turn. I knew what I'd see. The loop was catching up. "It's starting over," I said louder now. The lights dimmed in response. For a moment, everything held. Then, click, cart appeared in front of me. Same angle, same twisted wheel. Exactly where it had been when I first stepped in. I backed away. The shelves snapped into their original arrangement. Tomato soup, corn, beans. Perfect lines, perfect spacing. The floor clicked, hollow, solid, hollow. Reset. I felt my stomach drop. "No," I said. "No, it doesn't reset like that." It never reset clean. There was always residue, something left out of place, some trace of the previous loop bleeding through. This was too perfect, which meant it wasn't done. From the far end of the aisle, I saw him again. The customer, standing exactly where he'd been at the start. Milk carton in hand. Eyes too dark under the lights. A customer asked if the aisle that loops had started over again, he said. Not asked, said, like he was reading it. My throat tightened. That already happened, I told him. He tilted his head. The lights flickered once. You didn't answer, he said. The cart in front of me creaked. Its wheel turned slightly. I stepped back. The floor clicked wrong. Hollow, hollow. Behind me, something mirrored the movement. Closer this time. I realized then what had changed. Before, the loop reset around the aisle. Now, it reset around me. I wasn't walking into it anymore. It was aligning itself to wherever I stood. The shelves shifted. Not all at once. One section at a time, like pieces sliding into place. The labels blurred, duplicated, corrected themselves. The distance to the customer shortened without either of us moving. He raised the milk slightly. Has it started over? He asked. The question felt heavier now. Intentional, like it needed an answer to proceed. The lights flickered. Once, twice. I didn't respond. The silence stretched. The hum faltered. The cart behind me rolled forward a fraction, closing the space I couldn't see. The aisle tightened. I could feel it pressing in, not physically, but in the way sound had less room to exist. My breathing sounded louder, sharper, like it was being forced into a smaller shape. It doesn't matter, I said. The customer smiled. It was small, controlled. Wrong. It does, he said. The lights went out. For a second, there was nothing. No hum, no air, no sense of distance. Then the lights snapped back on. I was behind the register. My hands were resting on the counter. The store hummed steadily. A cart sat halfway down aisle 6, and a man stood at the end of it, holding a carton of milk. His face washed pale under the fluorescent lights. He looked at me. A customer asked if the aisle that loops had started over again. This time I answered immediately. Yes, I said. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. The lights flickered, once, and didn't come back the same. The store's soda machine dispensed a can labeled, "You were warned." I didn't press anything for that one. The metallic drop echoed louder than it should have. A hollow thunk that seemed to travel through the floor and into my legs. For a second I thought something had fallen behind me, but the store was empty. No footsteps, no door chime, just the low fluorescent hum stretching across the ceiling. The can sat in the dispenser tray, tilted slightly, condensation already forming across its surface like it had been waiting there. I didn't pick it up. Not yet. The air near the back of the store always felt different. Warmer, somehow, even though the machine was supposed to be cooling everything inside it. The hum it gave off wasn't steady either. It wavered, dipping just enough that you noticed it when it came back. I told myself it was old wiring. I told myself that a lot. I stepped closer. The machine's glass front reflected me in a dull, warped way, like the angle was just slightly wrong. My shoulders looked narrower, my face longer. When I shifted, the reflection lagged half a beat before catching up. I stopped moving. The reflection didn't. It adjusted itself into place, smoothing out the delay like it had never happened. I let out a slow breath. Just tired, I said, though the words didn't feel anchored to anything. The keypad blinked faintly. Rows of familiar labels, cola, lemon, something off-brand, lined up behind the glass. The colors were right, but the arrangement wasn't quite how I remembered stocking it. I frowned. I stocked this machine every Tuesday. Same order, same rows. Muscle memory. But now the cans seemed grouped differently. Reds too close together. A blue can tucked between them where it didn't belong. I reached out and pressed one of the buttons. There was a pause. Then a click. The mechanism inside shifted, metal brushing metal, and a can dropped into the tray. I flinched at the sound. It wasn't loud, just precise. Too precise. I bent down and picked it up. Cola. Normal label. Cold enough to sting my fingers. Condensation beaded instantly, rolling down over my knuckles. I turned it slightly. For a moment, I thought the lettering moved. Not changed, just adjusted like it was settling into place. I wiped it with my thumb. It was just a can. I set it on the counter behind me and went back to the machine. The hum dipped again. Longer this time. The floor under my shoes gave a faint vibration, like something deep inside the machine had shifted its weight. I pressed another button. Click. The can dropped. This one was wrong. The color was off, not a brand I recognized. Pale green, almost washed out, with text that didn't quite align with the curve of the aluminum. I picked it up. The metal felt colder than the first. Not just chilled, dense. As if the cold went deeper than the surface. The label read something I couldn't process at first. Then it settled. Don't open it here. I stared at it. The letters were clean. Printed. Not scratched or altered. Factory made. I turned the can slowly, expecting the text to distort or disappear. Didn't. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. My voice didn't carry. The hum swallowed it. I set the can next to the first. 2 cans. Both sweating onto the counter, leaving identical rings that spread and overlapped. I wiped my hands on my apron. I should have stopped. There was a sign on the machine. I'd noticed it when I started the shift. A small, laminated strip taped near the coin slot. It had been there before, but I'd never read it closely. Something about maintenance. Or maybe usage. I hadn't paid attention. Now I looked at it. The text was faint, like it had been printed too lightly. Out of order. I blinked. That hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. I leaned closer. The edges of the sign curled slightly, as if it had been exposed to heat. But the tape holding it in place was fresh. Unwrinkled. I reached up and pressed another button. The hum stopped. Not dipped, stopped. The silence hit immediately, pressing in on my ears until I could hear my own pulse. Then, click, the can dropped. I didn't move. The machine stayed silent. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, filling the space the hum had left behind. Slowly, I bent down and picked up the can. It was warm, not room temperature. Warm. Condensation still formed on it, but it evaporated almost as quickly as it appeared, leaving the surface slick and uneven. The label shifted under my fingers. Not physically, just visually, like the letters were trying to align themselves into something readable. Then they did. You already did. My throat tightened. I looked back at the sign. Out of order. I tried to remember. Had it been there when I started? Had I seen it and ignored it? The memory wouldn't settle. It slid around, changing shape every time I tried to fix it. I stepped back. The floor vibrated again. A low, steady tremor that seemed to pulse in time with the lights. On, off, on, off. Each flicker left the machine slightly different. The rows of cans inside shifted by inches, then snapped back. My reflection in the glass lagged again, this time longer. When I raised my hand, it didn't. It stood there, still watching. Then it caught up. I turned away. I didn't want to see it anymore. Behind me, something clicked. Not the machine. Something else. I turned back. A fourth can sat in the tray. I hadn't pressed anything. The machine was still silent. I approached slowly. Each step felt measured, like the floor was counting them. The can was colder than the first. Colder than anything should be. Frost rimmed the top, thin and brittle. I picked it up. The condensation froze against my skin. The label didn't shift this time. It didn't need to. You were warned. I closed my eyes. The sign. I saw it clearly now. Not out of order. Something else. Something I'd read without reading. Do not use. I'd laughed at it. Told myself it was old. Forgotten. I pressed the button anyway. The machine hummed again. Soft. Satisfied. I opened my eyes. The reflection in the glass wasn't mine. It was someone else. Same uniform. Same posture. But older. Tired in a way that didn't come from a single shift. They were holding a can. Reading it. The label facing them. I turned the one in my hand. The text had changed. It wasn't for me anymore. It faced outward toward the glass. Toward whoever stood where I had been. The floor vibrated once more. Then stilled. The hum leveled out into something calm. Predictable. Behind me, the store stretched on in quiet rows, unchanged. The lights held steady. The sign on the machine was clear now. Legible. Do not use. I set the can back in the tray. It settled into place like it belonged there. The reflection in the glass didn't move as I stepped away. Stayed where it was, holding the can. Reading. Waiting. And the machine, quiet and patient, waited with it for the next person to press a button anyway.